Did Vikings have cat pets? Yes would be the short answer. For the long answer, please follow this video till the end, because I'm going to introduce to you a couple of interesting aspects regarding the place of cats in Viking culture. This is Irina, I'm a historian and history teacher. This is my channel on Norse culture and Germanic languages. If you're interested in these topics, please feel free to subscribe. Alright, so Vikings as well, alongside many others, appreciated cats, not necessarily for their cuteness, although that might have played an important part as well. It was a relationship of mutual aid, and that's how we can characterize the relationship between cats and humans throughout history in general. So cats, well, the history of cats began in the Middle East and then in the Near East. Recent studies such as those published at the International Symposium of Biomolecular Archaeology in London 2017 show that the Norse also played a part in spreading them throughout Europe and maybe also outside of Europe as well. So cats, the domestic cats, stem from the species known as Felis sylvestris libica. And as soon as people started planting crops and also gaining unwanted visitors such as vermin, cats also tagged along, so they were useful to have around your household, and for them it was also useful because of the easier access to plenty of food. So we can say, in other words, that cats kind of domesticated themselves, and it was not really the same thing going on with dogs, where we have an active process of domestication. All right, so we have two waves of cat migration. So first of all, from the Near East towards Africa, with the example of ancient Egypt, where, of course, as you know, cats occupied a very special place in the mentality of these peoples. Also were worshipped, and then they spread from Africa to Europe, particularly between the 5th and 13th century. It's not really that clear at what time they appeared in Scandinavia first, but we can say, on the other hand, that they appeared in urban settlements. So probably Vikings brought them after they returned from their long and adventurous travels, or there were some visitors who brought them. There is evidence for this, for example, in some sites in northern Germany around the town of Hedeby. There is also some evidence that they played an important part on Viking ships. They tagged along here as well, and it is understandable because vermin also tags along on Viking ships, and it was something good to have on board. It was really helpful. On the other hand, there is also some evidence that they might have been used for fur, so fur and skin harvesting. We have, for example, a site in Odense in Denmark. It is a well with around 60 cats which suffered quite a violent death. Their necks were broken. They were not that old. And of course, we can say it might have been some kind of sacrificial pit, because the Vikings sacrificed all kinds of animals. But then again, it would make a lot of sense if they did indeed harvest their furs, because when you live in such a cold climate, you should be able to make use of whatever you have at hand. So it would have been a waste to just get rid of the furs. All right, we also have evidence that cats reached Greenland. And fun fact, cats back then were actually smaller than cats nowadays. This has quite a simple explanation. Cats were smaller in the past because they would utilize a lot more energy for hunting, and once they gained a bit more access to food by joining humans in their enterprises, they also managed to get larger with the passage of time. And the descendant of Viking cats are the Norwegian forest cats. These cuties you can see here in the picture. All right. Now, do cats occupy an important place in Norse mythology? I wouldn't say so. They probably did, but there is not very much we can infer from the very little evidence we have. So, first of all, we have the goddess Freya's chariot, which is drawn by two cats. So, Freya is a goddess, a complex goddess related to a lot of aspects, related to fertility, to womanhood, sexuality. She's also connected to magic and sorcery, the so-called Seder, which also involves some shamanistic practices. So she is somehow a goddess of the elite. This is also suggested by her name itself, which simply means lady. So we can speculate about the role of Freya's cats as in perhaps not only just a means of transport, perhaps also a means of shamanistic transport. So, using animals in order to travel outside of your body, or using animals as some kind of guardian spirits in that sense. Freya is also a shapeshifter. She has a feathered skin that she uses to move around. So basically, she changes into a bird, and she also has a battle pig, Lidisvini. So if we take all these animals into consideration, maybe cats were also related to this idea of sorcery and had some kind of relationship with the fact that the goddess being a representative of sexuality and womanhood, cats also have these aspects about them, their wild nature and unpredictability, which made them fit well into this whole picture of Freya. Other hints at the fact that they might have had some magical purposes, or related to the idea of prophecy as well, come from a saga, so a later source. In the saga of Eric the Red, Eric Saga Rauða, we have an example of a prophetess called upon because there was a famine, and the people wanted to know how long they are going to suffer. They would suffer from this famine, and the prophetess Thorbjörg, among other things, wears gloves of cat skin, and the inner lining of her hood is also made of cat skin, white cat skin, that is. So that might also lead us into the direction of some kind of magical animal, or animal associated with sorcery, or with the idea of spiritism, spirituality. In Norse mythology, we also have the concept of fylgja, which is one part of the soul, that part which can travel in other places and maybe also manipulate the environment, and so on and so forth. All right, this is also suggested by some carvings on the wagon, the chariot found in the Oseberg ship burial. It's filled with cats, and the identity of the woman, one of the women at least buried there, may also be that of a sorceress, or maybe a queen. There is still a lot of controversy regarding the identity of this person. Another example of cats associated with magic we have from the myth of Fenrir, the wolf, one of Loki's sons, the one who will swallow Odin at the end of time at Ragnarok. When the gods try to bind him, because they know what he's going to bring about, they make a fetter out of things which do not exist, and this is exactly what makes that fetter so powerful. And one of those ingredients is, for example, the noise of a cat walking, and we know that cats are very silent, so that doesn't really exist. All right, and one other reference we have from a myth regarding the god Thor when he is challenged by Utgardaloki, that was a giant, to lift his giant cat. And at the end, we find out that this was actually a trick, and among other things, this giant cat was the giant serpent Jormungandr, the one surrounding the world of men, the Midgard. So in this sense, the cat seems to be kind of like a metaphor for monstrosity, monstrous, and large things. Yeah, what else can I say about mythology? Not much, unfortunately. We also have cats among many other animals that we find at the roots of the world tree. So the roots of the Yggdrasil are populated with, yeah, all kinds of animals, and everyone seems to have their own determined cosmological role, but unfortunately, not much is left of it. We have some aspects about cats from later sources, or from the sagas. In the sagas, however, it's difficult to tell whether the image of cats actually stems from older pagan mentalities, or whether it was very influenced by the Christian ideas at the time. I tend towards the second variant, although there also might be some kind of reference to older practices as well. So, to put it briefly, in sagas, cats are often associated with deviants. So they have deviant roles, and they accompany very suspicious and shady characters. Perhaps the most famous example, and one of the few examples, as a matter of fact, is from a saga called Vatsdöla Saga, where we have a character named Thorolf Stegja. Thorolf Stegja is a sledgehammer. Yeah, so he's kind of like a sorcerer as well. He's depicted as a thief, very unpeaceful. He has no human companions, but instead he has 20 cats. That's quite the cat man. And these cats are all very large and black, and we find out that they're also enchanted. So, to quote to you the exact thing, Oka flyga storir och aller svartir och mjök trildir. So this trildir means enchanted. We don't know exactly what the author meant by enchanted, but we know that characters can sometimes put a spell on animals to make them very large and malevolent. And like I said, this rather reflects a Christian attitude towards these animals rather than a pagan one. Such allegations in sagas are linked to popular beliefs about cats and the supernatural, the fact that cats could embody forces sent by a person to accomplish a specific task. And in this saga, Thorolfur actually sends his cats to do battle for him, so in his place. We also have a later source, a folk tale, where we find out that Reverend Eirikur of Voksorar tricks some people of the county of Sida, and then they want to have their vengeance, and for that they send him a cat. So probably also some kind of spirit, yeah, to do their bidding, or to do the job instead of them. Now, witches with special helpers are pretty commonplace in medieval mentalities. We have, for example, the idea of helpers who steal dairy products, and these little thieves which is sent can either have the shape of a yarn, so a ball of yarn, which goes from one cow to another, for example, and steal stuff, but they also can be a cat, troll cat. So trolla is a verb which means to enchant, to cast a spell, and it's also preserved in Scandinavian nowadays. All right, So coming back to the example of Thorolfr I mentioned before, so we have another character by the name of Thorstein. He arrives with his men to make Thorolfr pay for his deeds, but he sends his cats at the door. So again, this is some kind of symbol because cats appear to at the threshold. This means at the border between two worlds. So they have this capacity to travel between worlds. This idea we can actually connect to older ideas regarding cats as transporters in a more shamanistic way. So transporters from one place to another. They become extremely ugly, hideous, also because they have a spell on them. And Thorolfr, in the meantime, also wants to fill the house with smoke. This might also be a reference to some magical practice, but in the end, his house burns down. So overall, we can connect cats with some kind of suspicious behavior in these stories, at least. I repeat, these are later stories, heavily influenced by Christian mentality. Cats are connected to heretics. Cats are connected to devilry later on with devil worship, and that is due to their semi-wild character as well. We also find in Icelandic literature a metaphor, a simile of the play cat and mouse play as a comparison for the devil playing with the sinner, for example. So we can see it in our example quoted before. This guy Thorolfr is presented as not being reliable at all. He's very strange, deviant, and he appears to have a devilish nature. In another source, Orkneyinga saga, the saga of the people of the Orkney Island, sorry, we have Earl Thorfinnr who incites a guy named Kolver to battle, and he tells him not to lie there as like a cat in the cave. So in this context, cats are associated with cowardice. And the last example from literature I have for you comes from a story called Orm's Thothor Storolfssonar, where we have a troll, Bracy, who has a terrible mother shaped like a black and large cat, as large as sacrificial cattle. So this is also something you are going to find in these stories, the comparison to these animals who are about to be sacrificed. So we have the companions of a guy called Osbjorn attacked by this terrible cat, again at the door of their tent. So again, this idea of the threshold between worlds. And we have a very picturesque description of the cat being very terrifying and with fire burning out of her nostrils. And she swallows some men, she tears apart others. But Ormr manages to defeat the cat when using his newly found Christian religion. So he vows to go to Rome if God would help him defeat the cat, which happens in the end, and he manages to split her spine in two. So yeah, we basically have these conventional symbolic associations in Icelandic sagas and in later folklore, which link all kinds of pagan symbols or pagan like symbols, the cat included, with deviance and devilry. Yeah. All right, so what can we conclude from this? Cats were definitely useful. We have cats in the Viking Age. We have cats in the archaeological record. We have some hints at cats being used to some extent as magical beings or in some kind of magical context from Norse mythology, and in later sources from folklore. We still have this idea of cats being somehow used in magic, but in a more negative way. In later Icelandic spells, for example, we also find the idea of using cat skins in order to cast spells, and cat heads were also used in some love spells. So yeah, maybe that is a reminiscence of some Freya-related symbolism as well. Right, so I hope you found this at least a little bit interesting. If you did, I kindly invite you once again to like and subscribe and to support my channel. Thanks a lot, and till next time.